And we are live. What's up, everybody? Let's get started with this week's live. We're going to be talking about podcasting, but let me first let you know what you're going to expect in the rest of this hour. We're going to get into should you start a podcast? Where did they come from? The cost of producing a podcast, or can you produce it on your own? And if you own a business, should you start a podcast? So that's everything we're going to talk about. If you're interested in that, hang around. If you like the sound of my voice and you just want to hear me tell stories, stick around for that too. But I'm going to ask you to engage in the comments and let me know if you like it. All right. Don't hit the like button. Don't hit the subscribe. I don't want you to do it just for me saying it, for the sake of me saying it. I want you to do it because you actually feel like you're going to gain value. So let's jump right into it and talk about where did podcasting start? Who started this thing? What the hell did this what started this whole generation of podcasting? So I come from the generation where I listen to talk radio. And when I mean talk radio, I mean like Howard Stern, like the AM station on the radio. Some of you may know I used to be a private investigator. I ran my own family business, and then after that, what I did is I moved to the Central Florida area. And since I moved away from my family business, I didn't want to do private investigations, but I got into security. Now imagine me at a mall doing mall security and riding around in the car, the little Jeep that rolls around the mall to make sure no one's doing shenanigans out in the mall parking lot. Uh I quickly got super bored in those situations, and it was just like mind-numbingly boring to ride around in a car. You would think it'd be awesome because you're getting paid to just ride around in a car. But trust me, it is not a cool experience. So what I ended up doing was I would listen to talk radio. And the reason I tell you that story is because talk radio for me was a way for me to just stay engaged, for me to stay current with what was happening in the news, or just to be entertained, just because I was bored. This is 8 hour days just running around. So talk radio was that for me. And as I grew older, podcasting came into the space. So I'm gonna get a little bit nerdy with you. I'm gonna tell you where podcast came from, who invented it. But the person that made this up was Dave Weiner. He was in the tech space, and what he created was the RSS podcast feed. Some of you may be asking, what the hell does RSS mean? Well, really simple syndication. That's what that means. All it did was it notified people or websites of when something was released, whether it was a press release or whatever it was. And he allowed audio platforms that at the time were creating their first podcast to submit to the RSS feed, and he was the one that created that central platform to do it, right? The world's first podcast was Radio Open Source, and that was released by Christopher Lydon. I tell you the history because I want you to understand that podcasting came from radio. Podcasting is not necessarily what it has evolved into today. I've talked about this on previous shows that the true podcasters out there that are doing a holistic approach and producing high quality podcasts are doing sound design, they're doing scripting, they're having producers on the show, and they're really putting in like their best foot forward. So not to say that everyone's not doing that, but if you want to play at that level, you're going to need to start to look into all these different types of things. So let's jump right into how much does it cost to start a podcast? Before I give you the dollar value, because I'm actually going to break down what it would take if you needed to have someone produce your show for you at a studio, or if you were trying to rent your own space. I want to talk through what are the three different types of people that start podcasting. One of the first ones is a hobbyist, right? Someone they love to talk. They love to talk to their friends. They love to talk to their family at get-togethers. That is someone that genuinely loves podcasting or radio or talking. I see that my boy Baron's getting ready, so I'll bring him on in just a second, so y'all could get to hear his perspective and see where he falls under these three categories. But the second one is someone that discovered that their hobby can make money, and that's the side gig approach. So let's say, for example, you started talking, you're like, okay, cool, I'm starting to get some views. Let's see what I can do to actually make some money off of this new venture that I'm going to get into. So that's your side hustle category, and then you have the full on professional. Now, the reason I have to go down those three first before I break down the costs is because the costs that I'm about to break down apply to those three different categories in different ways. So we're gonna go through that as well, so you can get the full picture of what it's like to go down this podcast journey. I love it. Like I feel like Baron, this is the right time for you to come in before I break down these costs, because you could share perspective of when you started your show. So with that being said, I don't know if his mic is working or not, but we're gonna see right now. What up? He's
Man,
How's it going? You
bro.
I'm sure you're busy. You're very busy. You know, you do things all throughout the day.
Oh my
Uh,
God.
what's up, man? Did you just come back from like an event? What's up? What you doing?
No, man, I've been doing shop drawings. That's like, so these HOAs, they only meet like one time a month. For
People,
all
I
the,
don't think people know that you're that smart. So let's
oh,
tell them, tell them why you're telling me that.
so homeowners associations meet once a month to go over the happenings in a neighborhood. So I have a bunch of window clients that we have to get drawings to their HOA prior to the meeting so they don't get bumped a month
Hmm.
for approval to get their windows ordered.
So these are
Literally,
uh like AutoCAD stuff that you're doing,
yeah,
or what are
bro.
you doing?
It's like they called me yesterday, like, we have an emergency. We need drawings tonight. So I'm like, cool. Did them last night.
That means
Get
somebody.
another call. We have another emergency before 9 o'clock tonight. We have to get it in. Just,
So if y'all don't know, Baron, you got a degree in was it engineering or
no,
graphic?
actually, college dropout. Did not get a
Oh,
degree,
my bad.
but I
Certificate?
went to a vocational high school where you get a certificate,
And that was for like
technical drafting.
technical drafting. That's what it was. So, when we talk about keeping it real and funky, and he came down here with his car full of sneakers, he was betting on the fact that he would be able to get a job in technical drafting, and lo and behold, life had another plan for him.
Yeah, none of
Uh,
them were.
but since we're right here at the section of the different types of podcasters, right? The different people that start podcasting. You heard hobbyist, side gig person, found out that you can make some money off of this. I feel like you maybe evolved into these things. And then professional, full on professional, you're making some money, you're sitting pretty. Which one of the three do you feel like you fall into?
The broke podcaster who's made no money. So this is the thing. When somebody asked me and gave me some perspective, it's like, well, it's not like you technically didn't make any money. It just wasn't a physical exchange of a dollar amount versus, okay, what did I provide from that experience? Could have been more than what the actual money would have been if it was like I made some money. I don't want to say that I didn't make any, but as far as like, did somebody physically pay to come on my podcast? No. Did somebody physically do some promotion during ads? No. So I'm in the red if that's the question.
Yeah, and well, that's one part of the question. The other part of it is, do you love podcasting? Like, do you genuinely?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not.
Thank you for keeping it fully 100.
I was on
Um,
a podcast today at Nucleus.
oh, you were?
Yes. Shout out to
Sick.
Christina.
Oh, yeah. I saw it. I promoted it on the
Yeah.
IG. Shout out to Christina. How was that? How
It
was
was
that
a
experience?
it was good. It was good to actually like, I'm a geek, so to actually see how their system works for people that are like paying for a monthly membership to have access to it. It was good to like see it work.
So
Like you come in,
you got to see the system, like how the
yeah. So
system
you
works.
get to come in there, you get to see you know, how they set you up, and then you got to see the person who's actually the member is literally controlling the session, like how you would be doing. Yeah,
Oh, like the engineer.
yeah.
Nice. So, well, I'll break it down for people to understand like where nucleus falls in that space. But basically there are ways that you can offset your costs. We're going to get into it in a little bit, but that's where Baron was. He was at one of these podcast locations that is in the inner circle. Is one of our friends, one of us, and they have created a space where it can be really easy to produce a podcast. But like I asked the question about if you really enjoy podcasting. I know that you're clearly honest and you're like, no, I don't like it. Um, but you fall, I feel like you don't fall under the side gig definition. Like it's not like you're trying to like balance the efforts of you podcasting with like commitments and stuff. Like I feel like you've integrated it into your thing.
Mm.
So I feel like maybe you're a professional. So like what's your thought process of like why you decided to integrate podcasting into your space?
I think podcasting for me was, like I always tell people, that this was the extension of the personal brand. This wasn't.
Mm,
But what people don't know is why I started a podcast. I started a podcast because people know me as being a really good marketer.
mm,
Because I was a really good marketer, other people were coming to me to see if I could market their podcast. Like if they hired me as a marketer, can I get their podcast where it needs to be?
to go. Yeah.
Well, me being as transparent as I always am, I can't be a marketer for something I do not understand.
Mm,
So in order for me to say if I can or I can't, I was like, well, let me do this for me and see if it's
yeah.
possible. And then people wanted me to like be co-host on their podcast. And I just was like, I didn't really, because it was a new space, I didn't want to build somebody else's platform before I tried it for myself, if that makes sense.
No, that makes total sense. I feel like you were being approached as a branding company like the Brand Castle, right? That was
Correct.
the company that was being approached for you to be able to provide this service, but you're like, hey, listen, I don't have enough of a case study to be able to kind of do this. So let me get into that space
Yeah.
and do it. And then little by little it evolved. I want you to tell your story about that evolution. But the first thing I want people to understand is the relevance of podcasting and the benefits that you get from doing podcasts, not only from a personal branding standpoint, like say you're a personality and you want to get out there and you want to do stuff, but also from a business standpoint. So let's talk through that evolution. So did you buy your own camera equipment? Did you buy your own microphone equipment to do this podcast? Like how did you start?
Um, that's actually a good question. I actually have all the equipment and I never used any of my equipment. Shout out to Gene Civil from Creative Media Group. Gene gave me a per episode price. Like, hey, this is what I charge to come just film it, and then I'll give you the footage and you edit it your damn self. And so I had to rent a studio, which was at Vision House.
Hmm.
I was paying that per hour. I think uh, Tony Visions was giving me like a little this like a family and friends rate. So I was
Yeah.
paying something like cheap, like $30 an hour or something.
Okay. Okay.
Um, so it wasn't really that much overhead, but that's still 200, $300 an episode.
No, for sure.
For
And
some
so
people
like
making no money.
so check this out. So you buy your own equipment. Let's say you bought a Canon 6D. Was that the one that you use for your video recording? Oh no, your
I was everything Lumix,
Lumix.
GH7, G7, and GH4s.
How much was that thing?
A G7 at the time was maybe $800,
So you got $800 in the bank. You got a microphone,
and then I had a GH5. I mean, a GH4, which was another 1,200 for the
and
body.
you did like a shotgun microphone.
Um, yes, no, I had these like tabletop.
Oh, like legit microphones.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Oh, condensers,
yeah.
the little ball
Actually,
ones. You
actually,
have one. You have one there.
here is it. Here's it right here.
Oh my goodness, this guy
This is what I
actually
was
has all
starting
this
on.
stuff. How much was that thing?
Oh my gosh, maybe $30 for two.
30. Okay, that's not bad. I was actually going to recommend, yes, there's some microphones out there that you could start that are really cheap. You don't have to get the tabletop situation like that. You could actually get just a little shotgun, 30, $35, Chinese branded, Amazon little microphone, and you're good to go with that. So now you're about 1,000, maybe $1,500 in the bank with this
Well, that's
equipment.
not even counting the lenses. Those was just bodies.
Oh, so that's not even counting like lenses. So let's put that at like $3,000. Let's
Yeah.
give it a round number, $3,000 to invest in his own equipment to start his own podcast, right? All
And
right.
and if Gil is watching, that was real budget friendly.
That's
Not
real budget friendly,
yeah,
right? We could probably like really tweak that nowadays because
yeah.
equipment prices have gone down, used equipment has gone down. So like there's a lot of really
Well,
cool
to my
ways.
defense, I already own this stuff, thank God.
Oh
That I
yeah.
didn't have to go out and buy it specifically for the
But if
podcast.
somebody did, that's what they would probably be
Correct.
spending,
Like
right?
Gene was using all Sony stuff though when he shot my stuff.
Yeah. So now, okay, so you have this equipment, you never used it to do your show. And the reason I feel like you're going to tell me, I'm going to ask, but I feel like the reason is because you couldn't do everything. Like you couldn't be in front of the camera, behind the camera, checking everything. Is that the reason why you didn't use your own equipment?
I was trying to create an experience because of the level of the guests that I had. So when I used to do Hip Hop Dose, and I used to interview music artists for Hip Hop Dose, I was a one-man band. Thank God my wife knew how to just push the record button sometimes.
She would be in the red carpet, like hitting the record button for you.
Well, no, it was sit-down style interviews,
Oh,
right?
okay.
But I would have to have everything dialed in, right? Have her sit in as me to make sure everything in focus, and I would literally have to push the record and just start recording and then sit down. So that
Okay.
was how I used to run Hip Hop Dose. Well, when I got to this podcast thing, I'm like, I'm never doing that again because I can't check the audio. I don't know if the mic is picking up. And, my wife don't know that. She just know how to push the record button. So
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, yo, no, I'm not leaving that to chance. So I didn't want to go that route when it came to this podcast. So I'm like, look, let me just film a couple episodes, see how I like it. And I'm like, all right, cool. But very quickly, I'm like, it was like it was a conversation starter. If anything.
Mm.
Meet somebody out, like, yo, man, you should come on the podcast. And I don't know if it was like a buzzy word, but it was almost just like that built the connection outside of where I met people that I could get them in my environment one on one and have some whatever I wanted.
Yeah. No, it's definitely, even now it's getting to be even more of a strategy for you to use to be able to connect with people this, it's a vulnerable environment to be in on a podcast. I mean, so we'll talk about that in just a second. But so you hired Gene? Who was your
I
video
had
guy?
Gene, I had known Gene I met Gene Super Bowl when the Super Bowl came to Miami.
Mm.
I was shooting for a brand.
Little known fact before you say that, I got married when Super Bowl came to Miami.
Oh my gosh.
On that day. On
So
Super Bowl Sunday.
so Gene, there was this big Super Bowl event, and there was like this gifting lounge at the Aventura Mall where
Oh, yeah.
all the celebrities would come and get bags,
Mm.
food, pots and pans, all these different vendors who had stuff to give to the athletes. So each photographer was assigned a brand to capture the content. I
Okay.
just so happened to be with a company called Pure Ratios, which was a CBD infused like
Like lotion.
hair cream. And Gene's person he was representing was right next to mine, which was like a lady who did something in the NFL, like sports management or something.
Mm.
So we just kind of was every time I was shooting, he was getting BTS of me, and I was getting BTS of him, and that's basically how we met at that event, Super Bowl weekend.
That's awesome. So how much was he charging you to record your show?
Maybe 150.
Okay, so 150 and $30 for the space because you got the friends and family discount. So you're sitting right now at $180 per episode,
Correct.
right? $180 per episode. let's divide the original 3K. You would have been able to shoot about 16 episodes. If you took the $3,000 that you wanted to invest in the equipment for you to shoot, right? Knowing now that you can't be the one doing everything,
Yeah,
hire Gene, you would have been 16 episodes in. How many episodes do you have right now of Everyday Game Changers?
50.
50. So 16 of those 50 could have came from the investment that you made for your own camera equipment. And look, guys, I am not knocking the people that want to start on their own. I'm not by far, because we both did this. We both
Yeah.
started on our own. We both hit the ground running and we invested whatever we could into the camera gear we have, and we just went from there. But if you start to think about it, okay, and you really want to get into podcasting and it's not a hobby, it's maybe a side gig, maybe you want to go professional, really think about, are you going to be investing in your own camera equipment and audio equipment versus you just hiring someone that already has all the stuff,
Mm,
right? Now, I feel like the second thing that's going to come up, because yeah, dime a dozen, you can find a videographer, photographer, throw a quarter and you'll find one, right? In Miami. I mean, we don't know if they're all good, but you'll find one, right? The hardest thing, I think, and this is even studio owners that we have experienced, because we're now getting into a space where Baron has Big Reach PR. He does the PR branding side of things. He does talk a lot about business and stuff like that. I'm a podcast advocate, but we're noticing how we can bleed into each other. And we've been visiting some studios and seeing, can we help you? It's not about competition, okay? This world is abundant, right? But we've talked to some studio owners and they don't know what I'm about to share with you right now. Where are the marketplaces for other podcast studio spaces? I didn't mean for that to rhyme, but let's right, let's talk about that, right? Because Peer Space, even to me, 3 years ago, I did not know Peer Space existed.
mm,
I already had the studio running for about a year. It hadn't made one dime, and I didn't know where I could put it so that I could rent the space. And this, on the flip side, if anybody's watching and you're trying to get into a place where, okay, I want to record somewhere, I want to record in my house. We're at our houses, right? We have whatever room we got in our
exactly.
house to do it. But you got to find a space that you want to be able to be comfortable in. And Peer Space is one of those spaces. Gigster, and there's a new one, B, that I just found today called Locations Hub. Like, I'm literally gonna go down all these marketplaces and
What's
put
it
the
called?
studio.
Locations Hub?
Yeah, Locations Hub. I feel like after, I don't know who was first, but I feel like after it started to become very popular for people to do online scouting, like
Yeah.
for film production or music videos, like people were going to these different websites, and some of them are specific to filming and like cinematography. So they cost a lot more than what Peerspace would cost. I
Right.
feel like out of all of them, from a cost perspective, Peerspace is going to come in first for its professional website. You could see all the pictures of the locations. It's competitive. Gigster is like, they came into the game, but I don't know. What are you gonna compare them, like Uber versus like Lyft kind of situation?
More like Airbnb versus VRBO.
There you go. If we ever get sponsored by these people. but the idea is that one started first, the other is kind of catching up. Locations Hub, I have no idea. I just found it today because I was doing some research for this live today, and I wanted to just make sure I found these locations for people. But all these locations, you have the ability to rent by the hour. Some of them have 2-hour minimums, but I'm sure you could find studios that'll let you rent it for 1 hour, so you can be a little bit more cost effective. So back to the point that I just gave earlier, 16 episodes for $3,000. At Collab Studios, we've done, I think, 18 episodes for a season for around 2,400. Don't quote me on it, but that's a rough estimate. Yesterday's price is not today's price, so check the website. But that's the thing, right? You want to start to consider what these things are going to cost and not just live on a hope and a dream that just because you're in front of a camera and a microphone, the rest will come. You
Mm.
got to put in some work, right? So from a PR branding standpoint, what do you feel like a lot of these people are making mistakes on when it comes down to starting these shows, like these podcasts, but not really leveraging them for their brand. Like, I don't, some people are just talking to talk. And we know we have a list of those people, right?
So I was actually listening to Shannon Sharp's podcast earlier today as I was driving to Nucleus. By the way, it took me 2 hours to get to Coconut
Oh, the
Grove.
traffic. It
Terrible.
hit you. It hit you.
But I was listening to his interview with Monique, and Monique has gone through the Oprah and Tyler Perry have blackballed people and these gatekeepers. So I'm watching. But you when you listen to it in the car, you get the ads. So this ad comes on, and the ad goes, "Hey, I'm Dwayne Wade, and you might know me from playing on the court. But now that I got free time, now I'm taking things off the court, and I have a new show called The Why. And I'm talking to them. Everybody has a podcast. And I feel like the podcast is the new retirement plan for people, either athletes or entertainers.
Mm.
That's the new version of what news anchor or correspondence. Like, if you play in the NFL, once you retire, you go get a little ESPN job as like an analyst or something. I feel like podcasting is turning into that for people who already have brands, already have audiences, and they just like, all right, well, I'm retired now. What am I going to do? Podcasts. So if you look at all the entertainers, the podcast is like the retirement plan.
Yeah.
People like Nori and Gilly and Joe Button, all these people who transition from being the artist. This is their version of being the analyst, but still being in the culture.
Still being in there. I thank you for sharing that, because from a branding standpoint, it's good to understand like where you can leverage podcasting. And you just touched on like the sports industry and like when these people retire, right? But I want to address some of the questions that are coming through the chat. My boy Benson Montgomery, thanks for stopping by. He says, I run a pod and now the equipment was very affordable and we run it through StreamYard. Yeah, absolutely, Benson. I mean, like, I could put together a very affordable list of, well, actually, I can make it super easy for you. You already have the equipment. It's your iPhone, right? You don't need anything but the phone you got in your pocket, and you don't have to spend any money for that. So he definitely brings up a good point. Using StreamYard as opposed to renting like a location, because you could use StreamYard and do remote podcasts, and that gives you unlimited abilities to create shows. So very good point there. He also went on talking about streaming versus pre-recording, and that's something that we're actually leveraging right now, right? So instead of going into the studio, which we actually used to do, there's some shows that we do for like Pod the Lab. You guys can go check that out. Where we pre-record this kind of stuff, we edit it, and it's not like we do fancy edits or anything like that. But we like to have the studio environment available for some guests. I feel like the face to face is a different feeling when it comes down to this thing. Streaming is great, but it's hard, man. Like, I'm looking at this camera right now. I'm lucky enough to be used to looking at the camera and imagining that's either a person or B, and
Yeah.
I have the liberty of having being close to you, and that you could come on like on a Wednesday and we could chop it up, because sometimes it's hard to get guests on your show, and we could talk about that. But
I mean, that was why I ended up at Nucleus today.
that's very true, right? She was actually looking for guests, and she didn't get any, and like you stepped
Yeah,
in there.
like when we talked about like, well, when we spoke at their event, she was like, "Man, I really like." We was doing those little speed date versions of podcasting, and me and her had a good conversation. She's like, "Man, I would love to have you come because I have these hours that I have not used,
Mm.
and the majority of the times I'm sitting there talking across to a fake person."
Oh, that's another one. I didn't even mention that. I'm so glad you brought that up, because sometimes a lot of people are like, "Oh, I need someone," because solo, I'm gonna let y'all know right now, solo talking is by far the hardest approach you could take,
Yeah.
because you need to script, you need to make sure you don't have you got to be like really good at like top of the head, kind of following an outline thing. But having a guest kind of be with you, it just changes the game. But if you can't have a guest, you might have to talk to yourself, right?
So
And
she
that,
would literally set a chair up like somebody was there. I don't know if she put a face on the chair, so it's like she was really engaged, but that's what she was dealing with.
mm.
But she did everything off the cuff today, and she was really good.
You know who used to also do that? Social Proof. Right? He used to record his Monday. I think he does like a Monday morning podcast, and
Okay.
he would record it by himself. Nobody was there. Just for the first, I think, first 30 episodes or so until he finally got, got going. So not knocking it if just do it by any way, shape, or form, right?
Yeah.
If you can't get a guest, do it on your own. Get a script, talk to AI. What right? Maybe you could turn on your dictation on your computer or something, and you could just be like talking to yourself, but you're really talking to AI, right? Oh, we need to invent that. I just thought about that. Could you imagine an AI podcast guest? Oh.
Like
Where
this week coming to the podcast, Morgan Freeman.
no, actually, I think they did make something like that. When we share the app, I'm gonna I'm gonna spook people a little bit, but I didn't create it yet. But there is an app out there now available to the masses that you can do. Oh man, so there's so much we could get into for podcasting, but I wanted to make sure that people understood what like why you should do this, right? You just talked about brand building. You talked about some people retiring, and this is like their plan to be able to still continue and commentate and all this good stuff. But I would love to share with you some factual information. This is at the half of the hour, our factual information mark, where we get to pull up the Pew Research Center. And what I asked the Pew is I said, hey, like, who listens to podcasts? Like, I really want to know. So 2/3 of adults 18 to 29 have listened to a podcast in the last year. And about half of those podcast listeners ages 18 to 29 listen to podcasts at least a few times per week. Okay. So the market is big.
Yeah.
Now, hearing that information, you feel like it's like an untapped lead generator for maybe a business
I wouldn't say it's a lead generator. I would say it's a conversation starter.
to
Like I
start
feel like
to talk about their services. Maybe that could
yeah,
be a good.
like I think it's an avenue to educate in real time, right? So if you go on somebody's website, you might not go on there and get like people have like frequently asked questions on their sites, but you don't get that engaged back and forth of the education aspect of the services, the whys, the who we target. Like if you get that, I feel like the podcast gives you an opportunity for somebody to like, if they want to know a question and say, hey, so what would it be like a ideal scenario working with your company? Well, I would be like, oh, well, let me send you a video from one of our latest podcast episodes that answers all of those questions.
That's a very smart approach, right? Going through what do you talk about on a podcast? We'll talk about the things that you get asked about a lot. Like
Correct.
have it be a frequently asked question type of thing. I'm so glad you talked about education. So you know the pillars that we all know from branding, PR, like and even content creation. Which one of the pillars do you feel generates like I wouldn't say revenue, but the most traffic? You talked about education. What other pillars are there, right?
So I
There's
would say education, motivation, and entertainment are the pillars.
okay. Out of those 3 that you just outlined, which one do you feel generates the most views?
The education.
Oh, okay.
Because I
Alright.
don't, I'm like, I try to sprinkle. People think my honesty is considered entertainment. And
Wait,
it's like,
hold on.
I'm not trying to be funny. I'm trying to be honest. But
So say it again. So people think say it again?
people think my honesty is a form of me entertaining them because they like, yo, he's funny. And
Yeah.
it's not that I'm being funny. So I kind of hit another pillar without trying to hit a pillar.
Uh-huh.
but the education is number one.
Mm.
I struggle with the motivation.
Okay.
I feel like I motivate through educate, if that makes
Mm.
sense. So my motivation is not like, yo, check out my new watch, man. If you work as hard as me,
Yeah, 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 yeah. I get
that's
it.
not really my
I
thing.
get it. Yeah,
But my thing is more like, hey, I was you before,
yeah.
and this is what happened when I took action. So,
I feel
maybe,
like you inspire through storytelling,
yeah,
and you're motivating through the education that you offer.
correct.
And I share that with you. I think that's why we get along. It's just because it's just it's a natural way for us to flow. But I'm excited to show you this next section on the Pew Research Center here. If I go down here, it's gonna tell me, well, these are the demos as far as high school, college, if they've had high school, college education or anything like that. But here are the pillars right here. So right now, learning is the most common major reason older podcast listeners cite for tuning into a podcast.
Okay.
So you have the older demographic going on to podcasts to actually learn, right? But then it looks like you have the younger demographic going to podcasts for entertainment. 75% of 18 to 29-year-olds are looking to podcasts for entertainment.
That's why you get the Bobby. What's her name? Bobby.
Oh, yeah, I know you're talking about the really dry girl. She
Yeah,
switched up her style all of a sudden.
yeah.
With
The industry plant is what I like to call her.
she's throwing me off with the style that
She's an
she
industry plant.
yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Why do you say that? Because she's trying to like be a troll or something
No,
for people?
because she was just a random average person that somebody was like, "Can we make journalists out of anybody and
Ooh.
make it trendy?" Like if you think about music, I believe Tekashi 6ix9ine was an industry plant.
Oh,
I can
interesting.
say that on record. I'll tell him to his face. He's an industry plant.
Well, he's done some things in DR, so one of these shows I'll start talking about that.
Uh-oh.
But out of the pillars, man, I feel like if you guys are watching this and you're starting to think about, or you've created a podcast, or you're in the side gig section, or maybe you're a professional and you've never done this research, look up the Pew Research Center and look up who listens to podcasts so that you could see like what are people there for. So you have entertainment. Um, they just want then there's people that want to have something to listen to while doing something else.
Mm,
They want like white noise. So that's where
mm,
I feel storytelling really falls into play. And
okay.
people that can tell really good stories um are really great content creators for people that just want to listen to something. Maybe they want to listen to something while they're working, maybe they're cooking or whatever. And they people when they're doing that, they love storytelling.
So what I
Um
would love to see a number is what is the parallel to the people consuming content now versus people who would be normally used to consume music in this time frame?
oh, that's a
And
that
see, do we see a drop in music where we see the increase in podcasting?
I'm gonna do that research for next week. That's actually a very good comparison. I think I'm gonna have to pull up the numbers separately and then put something together.
Yeah.
But before we move on to the next section, look at this, man. For encouragement or inspiration, it's the lowest numbers in the whole damn thing.
So what does that
Yo,
tell you about the platforms?
yo, if y'all not here to get inspired to start a podcast, like, what the hell, man? What am I doing this for? Like, I'm trying to get y'all to get up off your seats and do what you want to do and hit your goals. And you're not watching me to get inspired. This is I am heartbroken right now, B. Like, I'm seriously heartbroken. What kind of and then they have people to stay up to date about current events and stuff like that, or to hear other people's opinion. Well, you're definitely going to hear our opinions. You should listen to podcasts to get inspired, not just to be entertained. What kind of nonsense is that? I mean, I don't know, man. I'm very passionate about podcasting. I feel like there's so many perspectives you can gain from it. I listen to an economics podcast. I listen to Abroad in Japan, which is a Japanese. It's not even in Japanese. It's a white guy from the UK that lives in Japan for over 10 plus years, and he just talks about his experience. Like, there's so many things. What do you listen to any shows that
Most of the shows that I listen to, I usually listen to them because I watch their version on YouTube, the video format.
all the video format?
So
So
sometimes if I'm watching something on YouTube and I didn't finish an episode, I'll go finish the audio version on like Spotify in the car or something.
there's a big debate versus a podcast or a vlog, video blog.
Mm,
So people are saying that they're calling these video conversations podcasts, but they really aren't. And you know my whole spin on it. And it's like if you're not taking the time out to do full production or sound design or anything like that, like you
yeah,
can't really call it necessarily a podcast. I think that's probably the other reason why we record in the studio for Pod the Lab, because
yeah.
it's in the studio.
No, it
Right.
works.
But if you didn't have a reason of why starting a podcast, hopefully everything we've talked about so far tells you, okay, you should because of these reasons, right? The cost that it's going to entail, and maybe some of our experiences as we've been growing our own shows, right? Because Baron has a show, Everyday Game Changers. I have a show for the studio called Pod the Lab. There's other shows in the kitchen cooking that we still don't have them out. But who knows, man? Maybe we should start like a podcast network. Uh, I don't know. One day we'll see what happens.
The
Um,
toughest part is going to be starting that here in Miami
it's
because
definitely.
everybody lies about they think they have podcasting figured out and they don't.
I don't think anyone has this figured out because it's changing on an everyday basis.
I finally changed my Instagram bio today because I was on a podcast and I took
Tell
the
me,
word
please tell me,
expert out of my bio.
where is it? I can't. I don't have my other phone charged, so I could go look at it. That's amazing. You took the word expert out of it.
Yes.
We had this conversation on the lab
Yeah.
with Zone 4. We talked about
Yeah. I took it off.
facilitator versus expert. What light bulb turned on in your head?
Well, the girl was working on her intro to introduce me to the show. And she's
Mm.
like, do I go with personal branding expert? This is before the show. And I was like, please don't. Let's get rid of
Felt
that.
you felt weird?
Hearing it.
Uh,
And I
Written
was like,
down
oh,
as
no,
50.
no, no. You just reminded me I need to change my bio to strategist.
There you
And
go.
because one thing I don't like is I don't be capping. And in an
Mm.
industry where it's very easy to cap and it's very easy to go the wrong way and fake this and finesse situations, I can't because it takes me to a place of like street stuff.
The street stuff,
And
yeah.
it's like, yo, if I'm willing to just start finessing that, it's gonna be sooner or later I'll be willing to do anything, to increase the bank account quickly. Like that fast money ain't no good.
Yeah, I think I'm reevaluating my relationship with money, but if you definitely want to hear the full story, like in this episode that I recorded with Baron, he goes through the full story, every detail. I mean, obviously because of time, we couldn't go through everything,
Yeah,
but he did share uh that feeling of being in the streets and like doing what you have to do to survive, not knocking people that are surviving out there and pulling out hustles out
yeah.
of thin air. But we don't want to do that no more.
I
You
think
know?
that my story with my relationship with the streets is I think people think that I was in the streets because I had this struggle story.
Mm,
My story was never a struggle story.
mm,
Did we not have like the bare essentials or the basics? My mom did that as a single parent. She did that. I just wanted more and she couldn't give me more.
mm.
So it wasn't that we was like, oh my gosh, we was dirt poor and I had to sleep on a pissy mattress and that was not my story and I'm never gonna tell that story to anybody.
Yeah,
My mother
because
was a single mom
you
who
keep
worked.
it real.
She worked really hard, but she was only able to afford the the essentials. So
Yeah,
if I wanted anything else, I had to figure it out.
yeah, like Payless shoes, the dollar store, like whatever
Route
we could.
66 jeans, all
Yeah,
of that.
yeah. No, I get it. I get it. But yeah, if y'all want to listen to that story, it'll be dropping one day. We'll see. But it's there. It's cooked in the oven. It's already done. I feel like the last level of this is the professional podcaster. And what do I mean by the professional podcaster? You have your niche down. You have your concept of your show. You understand your branding, you've done PR, and now you've established a marketing strategy. Marketing strategy is not running ads. I'm sure you've seen the meme out there with the lady that says, like, there's a clear definition of a full marketing plan, and it's not just ads, it's a multitude of things, right? So I feel like the professional podcaster treats the podcast like a business. So if we treated the podcast like a business, as opposed to right now, we're treating it as a marketing strategy. It's one of our pillars in the marketing strategy. Both of us, I think. And even the fact that I own a studio, I don't use the podcast as a business, right? But if I did have to use it as a business, I would have to hire a team, a production team. And that would be someone like Gene to record the kind of thing, right? Film or record it. Then an editor, because Gene wasn't editing for you, so you had to do the editing, right? So
Mhm.
that could be Fiverr, the 5rr.com. And you could hire someone from India or someone to kind of edit your show. I think the rough price I've gotten has been like $80 for a 1 hour show, right? And then you got to do promotion and create your clips and all that good stuff. But nowadays, you got AI that can create a lot of that for you. So you got like Buzzsprout. Buzzsprout created a lot of the stuff that the way that you promoted your shows when they were audio only, right? You did it created like these little animations for you,
So
right?
Buzzsprout allow me to have like a static image and then audio kind of playing in the background,
Mm,
like those type of snippets. I could do those right within Buzzsprout's platform, but I still had to. It just let me upload it. It didn't have the capabilities to create it though.
mm.
I still had to just do my own thing when it came to that part.
And I mean, the reason I bring that up is because a lot of people start a podcast with the bare minimums. We always talk about, I talk about follow the path of least resistance. You talk about the fact that just be yourself and don't try to be someone you're not, because you don't want to be a WWE kind of star, right? When people see you out in public. Uh, but the idea is that if you're going to start something, before you start the podcast, this is the one bare minimum thing that I would say. Before you start, ask yourself, is this something that I want to dedicate time to so that I can gain money from?
Mhm.
Or is this something that I'm going to do because it's going to be how my content strategy, my marketing strategy is going to be? Like, ask yourself that, because that's the fork in the road. Because I feel like if you don't go into it thinking it's going to be a business, it can't evolve into a business.
Yeah,
Like, I think that's the hardest lesson
I
people
feel
learn.
like it's just the thing. I feel like it's trendy. It's almost like, do you have your wallet on you? Yeah, that's where my money is. I feel like that's what podcasting is. I see these people just randomly, like, because they have good conversations with their friends,
Oh,
be like, "Oh man, we should just start a podcast." And I'm just like, no. And then their whole podcast is about Marvel characters or their favorite Disney Plus movie, or
that actually makes some money because it's in the entertainment space. You know what I mean?
so it's
So
like, should everybody start one? Absolutely not.
I think everyone should, at least at the bare minimums, be a guest on a podcast. Before you start your own, go be a guest on a podcast to see if that's an experience you like. And if you're saying, "Oh, I don't know who to go, what podcast to go on, all that good stuff," send me a DM. I'll repost you on the studio account and on my personal account. Baron will do it as well if he wants to, and we'll get you on a podcast so that
Yeah.
you could experience what that is like. But before you go and take the leap of going to go into a podcast model, you want to experience it, whether it's in a studio or virtually. Experience it. I've had a lot of people hit me up. Hey man, I want to hire you to consult and come to my house and like do a full studio setup. All right, that's going to cost some money. Oh my, I didn't know that was cost that much. Well, guys, it took me about $30,000 to start the studio, and that was with a partner. Yes, were the decisions being made that maybe was too much money? yeah, I could have cut corners, but that's the reality. I'm talking about the low end. On the high end, you're dealing with at least 100 grand. And
Mm,
then when I start to look at the competitors, like if you look at other podcast studio locations, and one of the biggest ones right now that popped up on our radar because of their marketing strategy and because of their PR and branding, is the Move. Remember we talked about this, B? Is like, who is the Move really tailoring to? But
yeah.
if you start to look at the description in the bio and everything that we've learned, B, I feel like they've nailed their demo and they don't care about the other people that are being alienated. Not in a negative way. It's just that they clearly know who they want to serve versus who they don't, because their minimum amount is $500 to record one show. Yeah. And
Mm,
it's not like you're not getting nothing for those $500. You're getting an amazing facility. Where is it? It's right by Wynwood, somewhere on Miami.
yeah,
No,
and
not
they
on
go into
Miami.
the okay. This is the one percenters.
I
What we're
would say,
talking
yeah,
about.
they're in the top percentile. I wouldn't say it's 1%er yet, because I feel like 1%er is that just falls into like those full production houses, and like they have like 20-person teams doing shit.
Yeah,
And I think we've I think Onsite has dealt with some experiences like that, right? But I feel like what they're doing is they're banking on the fact that a lot of these celebrities have used their studio, and then now they're like, hey, listen, other celebrities that know these celebrities, or anybody that wants to be like these celebrities, and you have the money to do it,
yeah,
here it is, right?
yeah. Because anybody that's a real 1% got their own studio.
Yeah,
The
they got,
Stafford Bet Davis, the Grant Cardones, they build their own stuff out.
yeah, or lawyers. There's a lot of lawyers out that
Yeah,
build the studio for their own podcast, and then all of a sudden start to rent it out, right? So I have a whole new thing to add to my bio. In addition to podcast advocate, I'm going to be the engineer plug. You hit me up if you need a podcast engineer or if you need a music engineer, right, B? So because we finna go into a lot of these studios, so I'm gonna build this network. That's how it is. So we're heading right into the end of the hour, and one of the apps that I did want to talk about, B, I know you have experience in this, so that's why I wanted to bring this up with you. The Captions app. So the Captions app that famously puts captions on your reels now has an AI where you can talk, like you read a script, and then it clones your voice so that it could put it on other content. What has your experience been using AI in that kind of context?
um, I
Tell
struggle.
tell him the truth, because you told me
Um,
that. Tell him the truth, because you told me that story about how the AI doesn't get your real voice. Like
I
you got
struggle, man. For somebody such as myself who is not um a professional speaker who uh uses big words and has this nomenclature that's really advanced and very polished, I feel like AI does people like me a disservice because when I tried to do my AI and I gave it plenty of samples, I have nothing. I got hours and hours of content for AI to learn my voice. What the AI's version of Baron McQueen is the Yale and Harvard duplicate of me, right? So it's like anybody that hears that will be like, he's like real polished. It's like when people say I got my rich white voice,
yeah.
right? It's that version. So it hasn't nailed me down because there's a swag to the way I talk that I you can't teach AI swag.
I think AI has to do a little bit more learning,
Yeah,
because I feel like the models that are out there for AI to build from don't have enough mistakes built into it.
correct.
Like, if you really think about the human speech pattern and how we talk, there's a lot of things that we adapt to while we're watching the audience.
Yeah.
Like, rate of speech and my volume changes depending on the faces I see in that audience. If they're grumpy faced, I'm gonna have to figure out, let me slow this down a little bit.
Yeah.
Let me throw a little joke in there, right?
In 11 Labs defense,
They're good.
they do have a slider where
Oh,
you can change variation You can change excitement. You can
Oh,
change tone.
shout out to 11 Labs.
Yeah, 11 Labs
Yeah.
does a really good job of that part of being like, how can I make this um more normal? Like, does my voice go up when I get excited?
Mhm.
Like, they have that slider that really can do that. It's
So
just the vernacular and the language.
the choice of language that you
Yeah,
would
it's
use,
not
right?
hood enough. That's the only way I can say it. It ain't hood enough.
They didn't learn from the streets.
Right. There ain't
Um,
no ghetto in the AI.
but I feel like that's also a solution not only for someone that maybe is trying to get comfortable being in front of the camera, but they could create their version, their avatar or whatever. There's AI out there that are actually watch a video of you and then they'll put like an animation on your lips to match what you're saying, where you could script it, you could give it a script, give it text, and watch yourself and see and get used to you talking. It's not you, it's AI, but
Yeah.
at least you get yourself used to talking. But then you also have those no face YouTube accounts, and you have AI personalities that are getting paid for branding stuff. Like
Yeah.
there's so much potential in that. And I know we talk about AI a lot, but it's getting
Way better.
exciting.
It's getting better.
It's getting exciting,
Yeah.
right?
So these are the voice settings in 11 Labs. So there's three categories. Stability,
Mm,
where you can change the slider from a more variable to a more stable, right?
mm,
The next slider is clarity and similarity. And
wow.
this slider is from low to high. And then they have a third category called style exaggeration. And the
Wow.
style exaggeration is going from maybe its fastest version, speeding up, going up an octave, all the way to super exaggerated. And that's the sliders that they have within 11 Labs to really, let's say, fine tune it to really
Yeah.
make it sound normal.
I've been
But
staying away from all that stuff just because, we talk off the top of the dome. We could kind of do it our own. We don't need the AI, but I think I'm gonna start playing with it and getting some samples and seeing if people. There's a video out where this girl puts herself side by side and says, "Pick which one is not me."
mm,
I
yeah,
want to see how good it could get. I want to see what it could do. You know what I mean? Maybe by next Wednesday, I'll put up my avatar here to have a conversation with you as opposed to me. But look, man, we learned that inspiration and motivation is not a thing that people are watching out for, but screw it. We always got to inspire and motivate people. What do you want to leave them with this week, B?
um, I would want to leave them with, because everything is moving so fast. I think people need to get back to finding some time to do things that excite them.
That's you got to unpack that. That's a good one.
Yeah,
That's
like I
a really
love
good
that
one.
you're dedicating your Sundays to do your golf thing. Like, it's giving you a time to reflect and, like, you know what? Let me just get away from the noise and just decompress. And this is my stress reliever, but this is my place of peace right now. That you're excited to do it.
Yeah, man. I'm
And
under
I
the
think,
hundreds, bro. Consistently.
yeah, so I think people need to really think about what does their pace of peace look like, and when was the last time they actually did it. My place of peace used to be like, I want to go to the beach. That's why I moved to Florida, and I don't go enough.
We're gonna have to pick a day for you to go every day. I mean,
Yeah,
not every day, but every week.
yeah,
I agree. I'm a second that, and I feel like that's an amazing advice that you could give people. So many people just go through the rat race. They just work, 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 work. We've met some people. Shout out to Mike Schill. Listen, buddy, you got to take a vacation. I
yeah,
remember how shook he was when you asked him when was the last time you took a vacation, right?
yeah.
You got to take some time, man,
You
because
would think I asked him for $100. He was so puzzled. He was like,
it was like, wait a minute.
"That's a good question." What?
I don't remember, right?
Yeah,
Um, do something, whatever it is, crocheting, you want to draw, you want to take pictures, whatever it is, it doesn't have to all make you money. It really is, like B said, to reset you, get you clear-headed so that you can start to look at things a little bit better, okay? Look at life in a new way. So, I mean, with that being said, that's a great way to end it. That's another live, man. We're gonna have to cut these things up. We'll see what happens. We'll get some editors on this because we're gonna be professionals about it. I will see you on the next week's live. B, thanks for stopping by. I really appreciate it. I know you're mad busy.
Bro, did you know we missed the orchestra symphony last night?
Did we? Where was that? I didn't have it on my calendar. Stop.
Yeah, I remember I sent it, and I'm like, you like, you know what? Maybe you should use that for a music client.
Oh,
Bro,
never did.
I've been so locked into Frame by Da Vinci. I just got invited to the Celebrity Chef Pickleball Tournament hosted by the Food Network, presented by Capital One.
Oh, you know what? What, you got a +1 for that?
Bro, I just seen this thing.
If you have, look, maybe it's not that, but let's put it at the end. If somebody's watching till the end of this video, I always love putting you on shit because you're just like, God damn it, Angel, like, don't do that. But if you're watching to the end, DM Bear McQueen or DM me, Famous Angel. We'll get you on a +1 to one of these events. Yeah, that'll be fun. I think that'll be fun. If you view these lives and you enjoy, you're getting value, hit us up. We'll add you to a +1 to a dope event. You went to a Rick Ross event. We went to Icon of the Seas. There's not enough. Okay, we have too many events. We don't have enough people. All right. So if you want to join the team, hit up Big Reach. That's how we do it. We'll see you next week.